Fiona, welcome to the Scottish FA as Head of Girls and Women's Football. How have you been settling in so far?
I've been settling in really well, thank you. It's been an incredibly busy couple of weeks, a bit of a whirlwind entry, but I think what's been really good for me is that from my experience at SWF, I already know a lot of the people and the stakeholders, so I've been able to sort of hit the ground running. It's been a really enjoyable few weeks.
As you said, you join us just from along the corridor at Scottish Women's Football. How can you sum up your time there?
I think my time at SWF is probably best described by looking back at the time when I first came in. At that point, there wasn't really any commercial sponsors in the game. There was no professional players. So I look back now and see where we've come. We've now got an increasing number of teams and players, but also we've now got nearly 40 professional players and a lot of international players in the Premier League, along with some really strong commercial sponsors. So I think my time there, it's fair to say it's been part of the evolution of the domestic game in Scotland and very much a focus on club and competitions.
As you say, the women's game has grown tenfold over the last even 5 years. How exciting is it for you to join the Scottish FA at a time where there can be real growth and that can continue?
It's really exciting and it's something that I'm really proud about to come over and into the Scottish FA. Previously, my remit was very much focused on clubs and competitions, and what I'm looking forward to within this role is it's an even wider remit, looking at things like participation and being part of the national team and performance programmes. So it's a really exciting time to come in. It's been a tough time for people in the past 12 months with COVID, but hopefully we're seeing some positive signs and we're coming out the other side of that, getting people back on football pitches. So it's a really exciting time for me to be involved.
So tell us about your new role at the Scottish FA and your key objectives for the coming years.
So my new role is very strategic, so I'm here to lead and drive forward the girls and women's game within Scotland. My main objective is to deliver the strategy. So in the short term, one of the objectives is to get that strategy out into the wider public. Also in the short term, it's about trying to appoint a new national team manager. That's obviously going to be a key and really important appointment. But also really important in the short term is around getting people back on football pitches. We appreciate it's been a really hard year for people. People haven't been able to enjoy football as much as they would have liked. So in the next few months, it's going to be about supporting our clubs and all the girls and women that want to get back playing football.
You mentioned there that you're part of the process to appoint the new new head coach of the women's national team. How has that been progressing?
First of all, it's a really important appointment. It's absolutely key to the women's game going forward that we get the right person. I've obviously come in the past few weeks and there's been a lot of work done in advance of me coming in. So I'm now picking up with Andy Gould, the Chief Football Officer, along with Ian Maxwell, and we're progressing that appointment along. We've had some really strong quality candidates already, but we're not satisfied yet. We want to make sure that we've cast our net wide and far and that we've got absolutely the best candidates to choose from so that we make the right appointment, because it's important that we've got a national team that's back at major tournaments. That's what we all want and that's what we're all striving for.
Yeah, how important is it to take as much time as you need really to make sure that we do get that right candidate in place and to progress the national team forward and take us back to where we belong ultimately at a major finals again?
Yeah, well, we've seen the impact of what happens when we get to major tournaments. It affects all parts of the game. If we cast our minds back to 2019 when we qualified for the World Cup, I think we saw 17% growth in participation at that time. We saw an increase in the number of commercial sponsors. We had over 6 million people watching Scotland play England. So we know the impact qualifying for major tournaments has on the game as a whole. So it's crucially important that we get the correct person and we take our time and do our due diligence and make sure that appointment is the right person that's going to drive women's football forward and importantly take us back to major tournaments.
Is there a particular timescale for the appointment? The women's national team have a camp in June. Are you looking to appoint someone by then?
In an ideal world, we would like to have a person in place for June. But as I mentioned earlier, the most important thing is that we get the right person. So we have some flexibility. The next qualifying games aren't until September, so there's a little bit of flexibility there. In an ideal world, we do want them in by June, but if that's not possible, it's far more important that we get the correct candidate in.
Do you have a particular profile of a candidate you're looking to have? Does it have to be male? Does it have to be female? Or is it just generally you want the best person for the job?
It's not important if it's male or female. It's absolutely about getting the right person for the job. Somebody that has got coaching experience at the highest level in that performance environment, and importantly, somebody that we believe can take forward our national team. We know they've got the credentials and the ability to qualify for tournaments because we've done it. So the next person that comes in, we want to be able to take that group forward and take us back to major tournaments.
And as you mentioned earlier, of course, you're currently involved in the girls and women's strategy. You've been involved in that for the last year or so. Tell us about that and what stage we're at with it.
So last year I was seconded over to the Scottish FA to develop the strategy, and it was part of our UEFA-led programme, so we were part of a pilot of 6 other national associations, and we worked closely with a UEFA mentor. So I came over at the start of last year, just round about when COVID hit, unfortunately. So that process moved on to the kind of online platforms that have become the norm for us. So over that sort of period of 12 months, we've developed the strategy alongside the key stakeholders in the game. It was a really positive process, and we're now really close to getting that strategy out into the public domain. We're just refining it. I think what will come first will most likely be the Scottish FA's overall corporate plan, and what will follow from that will be the girls and women's strategy.
How important is it to ensure that women's football continues to be at the forefront of people's minds? You spoke about the women's national team and how important that is, but just in general, women's football needs to be, again, at the forefront, doesn't it?
It does. I think, as I've already said, when we look at the impact the World Cup qualification had, it's really important that the game is visible. And I think we saw that at the World Cup when the game was on a mainstream broadcast platform. The whole country was talking about Scotland women's football team, which is exactly where we want it to be. We're beginning to see some progress domestically as well. SWF have done some great work. We're seeing some live games on BBC Alba and BBC Scotland, and it's great that the league relaunches in terms of the Premier League One on Sunday, and the fact that we've got 2 live games that you can tune into shows that the progress has been made, and it's really important that young girls have role models that are visible. So keeping the game visible and at the forefront of minds is absolutely a part of our strategy going forward.
As well as that TV exposure that you spoke about there, we've also got a suite of sponsors within the Scottish FA that seems to be growing all the time. Is there a focus to continue to bring in more partners and revenue within the women's game?
Absolutely. So within the strategy, you'll see that one of the pillars is actually very specifically on commercial revenues and income, and it's important that we develop those partnerships. You know, recently Scottish FA has partnered with Weetabix, which is a fantastic partner, a really well-known, renowned brand, and that's the kind of partners we want to continue to work with. And I think it goes back to the earlier point about the more visibility we can have within the game, then the more commercial partners we'll attract to. Importantly for us, they align with our values and our ambitions for girls and women's football.
What are the other sort of key pillars and aspects of the girls and women's strategy that were key in sort of founding that strategy?
So we've spoken a little bit about the national teams and the importance of national teams being successful in that performance pillar. There's a pillar that looks very specifically at elite clubs and competitions and recognising some of the unique challenges and the way the game's developed over the past few years. But also participation is really important. We want to grow the base. We want ultimately as many girls as possible in Scotland to be playing football. So we want to continue to grow the number of players, and within that we need to support the workforce and volunteers to enable that to happen. And as I've mentioned as well, we've got that focus on commercial revenues to help us going forward, but also a focus on visibility and trying to make sure that the game is visible in Scotland.
The pandemic obviously is having a huge impact on society as a whole right now, including women's football, and we've been given £350,000 from FIFA through a COVID relief fund. Where do you see that money being spent across the game?
Yeah, it's fair to say it's been a really challenging 12 months for us all, and we've missed football to varying degrees, and I think people have had limited experience of enjoying football in the past 12 months, but it feels like we're coming out the other side of that now, which is really important. So in terms of the money we have from FIFA, £50,000 of that has already gone to Scottish women's football, and they will determine the best use for that within their own organisation. The majority of the rest of the remaining money will be invested into participation in grassroots programmes, and it'll be very much focused on a post-COVID return to participation for players that perhaps haven't had a lot of football in the past 12 months, but also focusing on trying to engage new participants in football. What we don't want is a lost generation because of the past year and the pandemic. And then a small portion of the money will also be there to support performance, recognising the impact that COVID has had and helping us mitigate some of the unique challenges that have come around for the performance pathways in the national teams as a result of COVID. What
are the challenges that you've experienced, especially at a grassroots level, and how are you going to use this money to overcome those challenges?
There's a number of challenges. We're always having to follow the Scottish Government route map to keep everyone safe, which is really important. But within that, what we've seen is a lot of kids have had, they've been in and out of football over the past 12 months. They've not had that consistent experience. So importantly, we're looking to invest the money directly into the clubs and the deliverers so that they can put on a really enhanced programme over the summer so that kids that haven't had access to football or not enough access in the past 12 months can get back into football over the summer and really get back to enjoying it.
Right now, more and more females are gaining leadership roles throughout the world. Is that something that you're sort of focused on and on encouraging, particularly within the Scottish FA?
Absolutely. I think the organisation's really focused on the quality and diversity. It was really encouraging just last week to see Leanne Ross be appointed onto the Equality and Diversity Board. I know the experience she'll bring from her experience as a domestic player and an international player. She'll certainly bring the voice of women's football and women into that committee. But broader than that within the association, it's really important that we have diverse decision-making bodies, and it's important that we have more women and more people representing women's football within the association.
Thanks for your time and good luck with the new role.
Thank you.